Hi everyone, I'm Taylor Gukeen, and today I'm going to explain to you what digital literacy is, why it's important, and how it shows up in our everyday lives. So after this lesson today, I have 4 objectives that I'm hoping my learners will be able to accomplish. So after completing this lesson, learners will be able to define digital literacy, be able to make informed decisions around technology by recognizing the ways in which digital literacy affects their behaviors and feelings, be able to describe the importance of digital literacy, and recognize the 6 different forms of digital literacy. So first off, let's start off with what is digital literacy. So the definition of digital literacy is that it is the ability to use, understand, and create technology. So we have 3 main points in this definition here that we're going to cover: using technology, understanding technology, and creating technology. So first off, let's talk about how we use technology. Technology is becoming more and more advanced in our world, and it's probably safe to say that each of us uses technology every single day. It is important to have technical fluency, so being able to use these technologies that are given to us and be able to be effective in this use. So in order to do that, it's important to have knowledge of how to navigate and access technology. So we know this technology is around us, but we need to be aware of how to use it and how to gain knowledge in order to use this effectively. And then once we get good at using technology, we'll start to develop the ability to multitask and use specialized skills within that certain technology, and this will better help us reach our goals and communicate with others. So now let's take a look at understanding technology. I'm sure we've all had many moments where we feel like this guy in the picture here and are just completely overwhelmed when it comes to using a certain piece of technology. Our technology is so advanced and it can be complicated at times. So, some skills that we need to use in order to understand technology include reflection, decision-making, synthesizing, and security. Using these skills will help us to comprehend and evaluate digital media within the technology. And when we have a better understanding of this media, it helps us make better and more informed decisions, which in the end, again, help us reach our goals and be more effective in this use of technology. And finally, we have creating technology. This can look very different and comes in many different forms. Of course, we have people who create actual technology pieces, such as phones and computers. And for the average person, that's really not the case. But anyone can create technology, and this is seen when we produce digital media and effectively communicate in our networked world. So some skills that we can use to create technology include social awareness, judgment, research, and problem solving. When we are creating technology, it's important to be aware of what sort of context we're in. When you're speaking with your boss or a potential employer, you may want to use a more formal context and formal communication with that person. Whereas when you're just speaking with a friend through social media, you can be more informal. And it's important to be aware of what sort of context you are working with. So now that we know what digital literacy is, let's talk about why it's important. So, as I said, our world is becoming more and more advanced with technology, and it's important for us to keep up with this in order to be an active member of our society. So, one term that I wanted to bring up is digital citizenship. We live in a networked world where people are constantly communicating through technology and media, and it's important to be an engaged user and consumer of media in order to be an active citizen. So to be an engaged user and consumer, we can use that definite digital literacy, being able to use technology, understanding how it works, and creating media and producing it to communicate with others in our environment. So we now know what digital literacy is and why it's important. And we've kind of talked about how it shows up in our lives and communicating in a networked world and all that. But there's actually 6 different forms of digital literacy that we're going to discuss. And it will really help us dive deeper to see how this digital literacy actually shows up in our life. So first of all, we have media literacy. This is the ability to effectively access, analyze, produce, and evaluate media. A good example of media literacy would be using various media outlets such as newspapers, blogs, magazines, to gain new perspective on current events that are happening in our world. Using these different media outlets, we can gain more information on current events, gain the perspective of many new opinions, and use that to form our own opinions. Next, we have technology literacy. This is our proficiency with technology. So this kind of relates a lot to the aspect of digital literacy regarding its use. So there's so many different apps out there that we can use to do just about anything you can imagine. But one specific example of using technology literacy would be using a PowerPoint presentation app to create an effective presentation to give a lesson to a targeted audience. Next, we have information literacy. This is the ability to effectively decide what information is important, be able to find, evaluate, and use the information. Many of us are college students, and we're very familiar with this information literacy. And a good example of a time that we use this is when we were working on a research paper. We take a lot of time to find meaningful sources that will provide us with credible information, which is accurate, it's up to date, and comes from a credible source. Another form of digital literacy is visual literacy, and this is very straightforward as it's the ability to understand and produce visual messages. So a good example of this would be if you're trying to explain to someone how to do something and you might not be able to actually see them in person, you could create a YouTube tutorial video outlining the step-by-step process of how to do something and physically showing that person through a visual how to get that done. Next, we have communication literacy, which is the ability to connect with others in a networked environment. So, as I said, there's so many different apps such as email, messaging, LinkedIn, Facebook that we use to communicate with others. So, all of those are good examples of social media outlets that we use to effectively communicate with other people. And it's important, again, to be aware of the context in which we are communicating in so we can be most effective. Now finally, the last form of digital literacy is social literacy, and this involves our social competencies. This can be seen from both an in-person side and a technology side. So a good example of social literacy would be maintaining a good relationship with a professor. In order to maintain that good relationship, we know that we can do that both in person and through the technology and digital world that we live in. So, for example, the in-person would come with going to your professor's office hours, having a good conversation with them to deeper understand the material being presented. And also, the technology side can be seen if you have a question for your professor and you need to send them an email. You would do that in a professional manner and in order to get your question answered effectively. So, we've talked about what digital literacy is, why it's important, and how it shows up in our everyday lives. So I hope you have a much better understanding of what digital literacy is, and maybe you are motivated to improve your digital literacy after gaining this information. So some suggestions I have to make some improvements include just being more aware of digital literacy in your world. You know, it's probably easy to just run by and forget about it, but if we're more aware of digital literacy, we can use all those different forms and be aware of the context in which we are in and use this to make good decisions about how we're communicating with others and how we are usually using our digital media. And also, don't be afraid to broaden your technology capabilities and be open to trying new things. There's so many technology options out there for us and so many different forms of digital media. If we really take the time to explore all these options for us, we can greatly expand our knowledge and be able to communicate with an even larger audience than we can now. So thank you for listening today. I hope you now know what digital literacy is, why it's important, and how it shows up in your everyday life. I just ask that you please complete the quiz and survey which I have provided to you, and if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you very much.